I heard my daughter whisper the secret about my husband, the secret I was never meant to hear, and in that instant, I felt my entire life crumble. The church smelled of lilies and roses, sharp and suffocating. My hands trembled against the black fabric of my dress as I stared at the coffin. 52 years of marriage, and now, the man I thought I knew was gone, and maybe, so was the truth. People murmured around me, offering condolences that floated past like dust motes. "He was a good man, you were lucky, he'll be missed." I nodded politely, lips pressed tight, while inside my chest a storm twisted itself into knots. And then, as if drawn by fate, my daughter leaned in. Her warm breath brushed my ear, her words soft yet piercing. She told me something that shattered the foundation of everything I believed about my husband. I couldn't process it at first. My grief, my shock, my love, they all collided and left me dizzy. I gripped the edge of the pew as the organ swelled. My son's hand found mine, firm and grounding, but I barely felt it. My daughter's eyes, so like his, looked sharp and haunted. She had carried this weight silently, waiting for the perfect, or maybe the worst, moment. That moment had arrived. I kept my face calm. You have to, in a room full of mourners. But inside, my mind raced backward, forward, and sideways all at once. I pictured every small moment, every secret laugh, every unspoken argument, and tried to trace the outlines of a life I suddenly wasn't sure I knew. After the service, outside in the biting autumn air, I clung to the smallest comforts, the rustle of leaves underfoot, the distant hum of cars, my youngest grandchild tugging at my sleeve and asking when we'd go home. I bent down, kissed her cheek, inhaled the sweetness of peppermint candy, and tried to anchor myself. "Mom," my daughter said quietly, almost a whisper again, "we need to talk. Just us." I studied her face. Fear, hesitation, guilt, all woven into her features. My baby girl, grown, carrying a truth that I had no idea existed. I wanted to demand answers immediately. But the mourner's eyes, the cemetery, the ritual of the day, all forced me to swallow it down, to wait. At the graveside, I traced the polished wood of the coffin, feeling its unnatural coldness through my trembling fingers. The pastor's words faded into distant echoes, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Each thud of dirt hitting wood felt like a hammer against my heart, each grain marking a finality I wasn't ready for. Back at home, the house was too quiet, too empty. The lingering scent of lemon polish and old wood reminded me that he wasn't coming back to fill this space. I hung my coat, and my hands lingered on the fabric, remembering how he always took it from me in winter, shaking off snow like it was a daily ritual of care. I sat at the kitchen table with a lukewarm cup of tea, staring through the steam at my own reflection. My daughter appeared in the doorway. She closed it softly behind her, careful not to let the others hear. "Mom," she said, voice trembling slightly. I looked at her, really looked. Lines around her mouth, worry in her eyes, my child, now a woman burdened with a secret I wasn't ready to bear. "I heard you," I said softly, voice tight. "Not here. Not today. And not another word until I'm ready." Her eyes glistened. She hadn't told me to hurt me, she had told me because she couldn't hold it any longer. I understood that, and yet the sense of betrayal ran deep. That night, I pressed my face to my husband's chair. His scent, aftershave, tobacco, clung to the cushions. I whispered into the dark, "Why didn't you tell me?" The silence answered back. The house seemed to hold its breath, waiting with me. I replayed every year we had together, birthdays, late-night drives, small quarrels, shared laughter, and felt the secret weigh down on them all. It was as if the past itself was being rewritten in front of me. Next morning, I forced myself into routine, cooking breakfast for the grandchildren. The scent of buttered pancakes filled the air, comforting yet bittersweet. Their chatter gave me fleeting moments of normalcy, a temporary balm over the wound I could not yet name. Later, in the crisp autumn garden, I sat with my daughter. Leaves crunched underfoot, smoke from a neighbor's chimney spiraled into the sky. "Mom," she said softly, "I'll tell you everything when you're ready." I took a deep breath, feeling fear and longing intertwine. "Tomorrow," I said. "Tomorrow, maybe. Tonight, just let me breathe." She reached for my hand, and I let her. Yet inside, my heart braced itself. Whatever truth she carried could never be unseen. It might break me, or finally set me free. And still, some part of me wanted it. After 52 years of marriage, after decades of trust and love, I deserved to know who my husband really was. Morning came heavy and grey, the kind of sky that presses down on your shoulders before you even get out of bed. I stayed in the chair my husband used to occupy, the faint smell of tobacco still clinging to it, and waited for my daughter. I didn't need to ask, she knew I was ready, somehow. She entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. I didn't take mine immediately. I just watched her. Her hands were steady, but I could see the tremor in her jaw. That's when I realized the truth she was about to share was as painful for her as it was for me. "Mom," she began, sitting across from me, "I'm so sorry I kept this from you." I closed my eyes and let the words settle, letting the steam from the tea blur my vision. The sound of her apology was soft, but it carried a weight heavier than the casket I had kissed goodbye the day before. "Start from the beginning," I whispered. My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. I hated that I sounded weak, but I didn't care. I needed to know. She took a deep breath, and then she spoke, slowly, each word cutting through the air like a cold knife. "It wasn't just a mistake, Mom. It wasn't just something I overheard. It's about Dad. About us." I felt my stomach drop. My mind scrambled, trying to piece together fragments of memories, half-forgotten arguments, nights he came home late, things that didn't quite make sense until now. My hands clenched the edge of the table. "What do you mean?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. He had another family, Mom. Another life. And I only found out last year. Not just someone he knew. Another wife. Another child. They didn't know about you or us. And we were never supposed to know. The words fell into the room, and I felt them hit my heart like stones. I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse. I wanted to disappear and take the grief with me. Instead, I sat frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe, as the tea cooled in my hands. My daughter reached across the table. "I couldn't keep it from you anymore. I couldn't. I needed you to hear it from me, not from someone else." I looked at her, at the resemblance of my husband in her eyes, and felt a strange mix of love and betrayal. I wanted to shake her, to curse him, to weep all at once. Instead, I whispered, Why would he do that?" She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't know, Mom. Maybe he was lonely. Maybe he was scared. Maybe. I'll never understand it. But I know you deserve to know the truth." I closed my eyes and pressed my palms to my face. 52 years of marriage, and suddenly it felt like none of it was real. Or maybe it was, but layered over a lie so deep I didn't know how to dig myself out. I thought about all the nights I waited up for him, the meals I prepared, the laughter we shared, the arguments we resolved. Every memory was tinged now with uncertainty. Every smile questioned. Every touch doubted. The room felt smaller. The walls closer. The silence between us stretched into hours, though it was only minutes. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant caw of a crow outside, the rustle of leaves in the wind. Each sound a reminder that the world continued, indifferent to the crumbling pieces of my life. Finally, I lifted my head. My eyes met hers. "Did you ever meet her?" I asked quietly. Yes, she admitted. I met her last summer. She has no idea about us, Mom. She's kind, unaware, completely innocent. But knowing him, knowing you, it's all tangled now. I reached out, touching her hand, feeling the warmth of life in the midst of grief. Thank you, I whispered. Not for the secret, not for the pain, but for telling me herself. For trusting me with the truth. She nodded, relief and guilt mingling on her face. I wanted you to be ready. I didn't want to hurt you. Hurting me. I laughed softly, bitterly. Child, it's too late for that. The hurt's already here. But, now we can face it together. We sat in silence for a long time, sipping tea, letting the weight of revelation settle. I thought about my husband, the man I loved, the man who had deceived me, the man I now didn't entirely know. I felt grief, yes, but also a strange clarity. Truth had a sharp edge, but it also had a way of cutting through illusion. Outside, the sky had lightened. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, glinting off the mugs. For the first time in hours, I felt the air in my lungs again. Mom, my daughter said, breaking the silence, what will we do? I looked at her, at the reflection of my husband in her features, and then at the quiet house around us. I felt a strength I didn't know I still had, a resilience born from decades of love, laughter, and yes, even loss. We live, I said. We live and remember who we are. And we make sure our children know the truth, not the secrets, but us. She smiled weakly, tears still glistening. Together. Together, I said, and I meant it. For the first time, the weight of betrayal didn't feel like it would crush me entirely. It would sting, yes, and it would leave scars, but we would endure. Because we had to. And because, somewhere deep inside, the life we built still existed beneath it all. Later, I walked through the garden, leaves crunching beneath my feet, the crisp air filling my lungs. I thought of my husband, the man I loved, the man I didn't fully know, and I felt both sorrow and strange acceptance. The secret was out, and it changed everything, but it also freed us. That evening, I sat with my grandchildren, reading stories I had read to their parents. Their laughter filled the house, a balm to a wound still raw. I realized that even in betrayal, life moves forward. Even in grief, there is love. Even in truth, there is healing. And as I watched their faces, innocent and unknowing, I understood, the legacy we leave isn't in secrets, but in honesty, resilience, and the courage to face whatever life throws at us, together. The days that followed were strange and hollow. The house felt like a theater where I was the only actor left, performing for an audience that had already gone. The secret hung in the air, heavy and unspoken, yet impossible to ignore. Every corner reminded me of him, the chair he loved, the mug he always left in the sink, the faint scent of his aftershave in the hallway closet. And now, layered over all of it, was a truth I couldn't unhear. I found myself walking through the rooms, touching the furniture, brushing my fingers along the spines of books we had read together. Memories assaulted me, small, intimate ones that once brought joy, now tinged with betrayal. The laugh he had, the way he tilted his head when he was trying to tease me, the way he'd hum softly while making breakfast, each image fractured. Could I trust my own recollection? Or had I been living a half-life, blind to what really existed? My daughter was patient, watching me navigate this storm. She didn't press me, didn't ask me to confront him or speak the words aloud. She simply sat near me, sharing cups of tea in silence, letting me digest what she had revealed. And still, the question roared in my chest, how could he have done this to us? To me? One evening, I found myself on the porch, the autumn wind biting at my cheeks. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and stared at the horizon, the sky painted in bruised purples and grays. The house behind me was quiet, the children asleep, my daughter reading in the living room. I let the memories flow freely, the laughter, the fights, the comfort of routine, and now, the jagged edge of betrayal. I remember saying aloud, though no one was near, "Did I ever really know him?" The wind seemed to answer with a whisper through the trees. And I realized that knowing someone isn't about witnessing every moment. Sometimes, it's about accepting the parts of them you'll never understand, and the ones they choose to hide. Days turned into nights, and I began to examine the letters he had left behind, notes tucked into drawers, reminders of birthdays, scribbles about plans, little poems he had written in the margins of books. Each one was a ghost of the man I loved, a reflection of a truth that now felt incomplete. Could love survive this revelation? Could memory coexist with betrayal? My daughter joined me one evening at the kitchen table, candles flickering, tea steaming between us. "Mom," she said, voice low, "I think we need to decide what to do about his other family. About them knowing the truth." I stared at her, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. "Do we confront them?" I asked, though a part of me recoiled. What would confrontation change? Would it bring justice, closure, or only more pain? "I don't know," she admitted. I can't ignore it anymore. We can't pretend it didn't happen." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility press down. Not just for myself, not just for her, but for the generations who would come after us. Secrets have a way of spreading, mutating, leaving scars unseen but deeply felt. I understood now that truth, no matter how painful, was necessary, not revenge, not judgment, just clarity. Later, I walked through the garden, fingers brushing over fallen leaves, noticing the smell of earth after rain. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed, but inside me, something had shifted. I realized grief wasn't just sorrow, it was the unraveling of certainty, the confrontation of what we cannot control. And betrayal wasn't only about the one who deceived, but also about the fragile illusions we construct to survive. My daughter reached for my hand again, and I felt the warmth anchor me. "We'll get through this," she whispered. "Yes," I said, though my voice trembled. "But it won't be easy. And we'll carry these truths with us, every step." That night, I lay awake, thinking about the life I had built, the love I had given, and the lies I had unknowingly embraced. My mind wandered through 52 years, a tapestry of moments now tinged with doubt. And yet, even with betrayal etched deep in the fabric, I felt a strange clarity emerging. I could no longer live in illusions, but I could live in truth. And truth, as harsh as it was, could also be liberating. I thought of my grandchildren, innocent and bright, and realized that my response to this revelation mattered more than the revelation itself. I needed to be strong for them, to show that life, even when fractured, could still be whole in its own imperfect way. And so, I made a promise to myself, to remember the man I loved, flaws and all, but never to ignore the truth again. To cherish the moments of joy, confront the moments of pain, and guide my family with honesty, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. It started with a letter. I found it tucked between the pages of one of his old notebooks, yellowed at the edges, the handwriting unmistakable. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The envelope smelled faintly of tobacco, the kind he always smoked after dinner. Inside was an invitation, or perhaps a summons, his handwriting delicate, almost apologetic, addressed to me, though it was clearly intended for someone else. My heart thudded, a sharp, insistent beat that made my chest ache. I called my daughter immediately. She came, boots clicking on the hardwood floor, eyes wide and alert. "Mom," she said, crouching beside me, "what is it?" I handed her the letter. She read it slowly, every word sinking into her like a stone. I could see the flash of shock cross her face, the tremor of anger beneath the surface. It's from her," she said finally. "From the other family." I swallowed hard. The truth I had begun to process now demanded action. My hands shook as I dialed the number scrawled at the bottom of the letter. My daughter hovered, tense, as the line rang. A woman answered, voice calm and unsuspecting. Hello. I introduced myself carefully, measured, keeping my voice steady even though my knees trembled. I need to speak with you about my husband. About the life he led that we never knew about. There was a pause, a breath held across the line. Oh, she said finally. I think I understand. Her words made the room shrink. My daughter pressed her hand to my shoulder, grounding me, but the weight of years of secrecy pressed down harder than ever. We arranged to meet the next day at a small cafe halfway between our homes. The morning was sharp, cold air cutting across my face as we drove, leaves crunching under tires, the scent of wet earth filling the car. Every minute, my mind raced through questions. Why now? How did she find out? Was she angry? Was she hurt? Could any of us be whole again after this? When we arrived, she was already there, a woman in her 40s, calm but with eyes that betrayed a hint of fear. She rose as we approached, a tentative smile on her lips. I'm glad you came, she said softly. I didn't want to surprise you. We sat, the three of us in a corner booth, the hum of the cafe wrapping around us like a barrier from the world outside. My daughter squeezed my hand under the table. I could feel her tremor, mirroring my own. The woman began to speak, carefully, recounting what she knew, what she had discovered, and what my husband had hidden. Each word felt like a hammer on the walls of the life I had built, breaking through old certainties. And yet, there was honesty in her voice, a gentle acknowledgement of the complexity of the man we both loved and despised. I didn't know about you, she said finally, tears brimming. None of us did. And I wish I had known. I wish any of this could have been different. I reached for her hand. Strange, but necessary. Strange, because we were strangers in a sense, yet connected by the same man, the same betrayal, the same pain. My daughter whispered, Mom, what do we do? I looked at her, then at the woman across from me, and realized the answer was simple, though far from easy. We face it, I said. All of it. We don't pretend anymore. We acknowledge the hurt, the mistakes, and we decide what kind of family we want to be, moving forward. The conversation was long, filled with tears, questions, and occasional silences heavy with grief. I felt layers of sorrow peel away, replaced by something steadier, resolve. For the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel completely adrift. I felt like I had a rudder again, however fragile. Driving home afterward, the wind stung my cheeks, the sky a dull grey, and I thought about my husband, not with rage, not with complete forgiveness, but with the bittersweet understanding that people are often more complicated than we can ever know. Love and betrayal, truth and lies, grief and resilience, they coexist, tangled and inseparable. At home, I sat with my grandchildren, listening to their chatter, the world still spinning around them. And I realized something crucial: our lives are not defined by the secrets of the past but by how we choose to carry ourselves in the present. That night, I wrote in my journal, words trembling on the page, recording what had happened, what I felt, and what I hoped for. This was my act of preservation, my act of control in a life suddenly heavy with uncertainty. I had been blindsided, yes, but now I was awake. Now I could see the landscape of my family clearly, with all its hidden valleys and unseen peaks. And in that clarity, I made a promise, to live fully, honestly, and with love, even when the shadows of betrayal lingered. To teach my grandchildren that life's truths are messy, painful, but also necessary. And to honor the memory of a man I loved, flawed and human, while never letting his secrets define us again. The days after the cafe meeting felt surreal, like I was walking through a fog that refused to lift. Every time I passed his chair, every time I saw the mug he had left on the counter, I was reminded of the life he had hidden from us. The house, once filled with small, ordinary comforts, now echoed with questions I had no answers to. My daughter tried to keep the routine steady: tea in the morning, pancakes on weekends, laughter with the grandchildren, but I could see the strain behind her eyes. She was grieving too, not just for my husband, but for the illusions we had all clung to. One evening, I found her in the kitchen, staring out the window, a plate of untouched pancakes in front of her. "Mom," she said softly, I feel like everything's changed." I nodded, understanding the weight she carried. "It has," I said. "But some things don't change. Love, family, the children, we still have those. We just have to decide how to protect them, how to move forward." She looked at me, doubt and worry written across her face. "But how do we even begin?" I poured us both tea, the steam curling between us, fragrant with cinnamon and chamomile. "One step at a time. One truth at a time," I said. "We don't have to have all the answers today. We just have to keep facing them." Later that night, I tucked my grandchildren into bed. Their small voices whispered questions about bedtime stories, about why Grandpa wasn't there. I told them what I could without the weight of betrayal, without fracturing their innocence. They snuggled into their blankets, and I felt a moment of peace, fleeting but real. The next morning, the air was cold and sharp. I took a walk in the garden, my hands brushing over the damp leaves, the smell of wet earth grounding me. Memories of my husband flowed freely, their warmth and their deception intertwined. I realized that grief wasn't linear. It came in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes crashing over you, pulling you under. My daughter joined me, hands tucked into her coat pockets. We walked in silence for a while, the crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound. Finally, she spoke. "Mom, I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared we won't recover from this. That we'll never trust again." I stopped and faced her, feeling the weight of 52 years of marriage and the shattering of its foundation. "Child," I said, "trust isn't given once. It's built, rebuilt, and sometimes repaired in ways we never thought possible. And love doesn't disappear, even when we're hurt. It just changes form." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Do you think we can survive it?" I nodded, firm now, more certain than I had felt in weeks. "Yes. We have to. Not just for ourselves, but for the family. And for him, too, however complicated that is. We can honor the good while acknowledging the betrayal." Back inside, the house felt less suffocating, though the shadows lingered. I began sorting through letters, notes, photographs, small remnants of his secret life. I wanted to understand, not to justify, but to see the man I loved in full, with all his flaws. My daughter sat beside me, sorting her own pile of letters. We didn't speak much, words were heavy, sometimes unnecessary. Instead, we let our shared presence bridge the gap between grief and resilience. That evening, I lit candles in the living room. The warm glow softened the edges of the house, making it feel less empty, less haunted. I watched my grandchildren play, their laughter ringing out like a reminder that life continues, even when the past refuses to rest. I realized something crucial: confronting betrayal doesn't erase love or memories. It sharpens them. It forces you to see clearly, to decide what matters, and to hold onto it fiercely. And in that clarity, I found a kind of strength I hadn't known I still possessed. Later, I wrote in my journal again, recording thoughts, feelings, and reflections. I wrote about the shock, the grief, the anger, but also about hope. Hope that we could heal, that we could teach our children the importance of honesty, resilience, and love, even when life is messy and unpredictable. And as I closed the journal, I realized something else: the truth, as painful as it was, had also set us free. Free from illusions, free from lies, free to live fully in the present, embracing both the beauty and the heartbreak of life. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the house breathe around me. I thought of my husband, not with rage, not with blind affection, but with acknowledgement. I had loved him, I had been deceived, and I had survived. And I knew, somehow, that survival was only the beginning. It was a grey, drizzling afternoon when the knock came at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My daughter and I exchanged wary glances before I rose slowly, the weight of weeks pressing down on my shoulders. When I opened it, there she stood, the other woman. Her eyes were wide, uncertain, and there was a tension in her posture that mirrored my own. In her hands was a small box, carefully wrapped, as if it contained something fragile or dangerous. I wasn't sure if I should come, she said, voice low. But I think you need to see this. We led her into the living room. My daughter stayed close to me, hand lightly gripping my arm. The room smelled faintly of rain and wet leaves drifting through the open window. My heart thudded, a steady, heavy rhythm. She opened the box, revealing photographs. Old ones, faded at the edges, with scribbled notes on the back. My husband in places I didn't recognize, smiling with people I didn't know, and children. A little boy, a little girl. My breath caught in my throat. They're his children, she said softly. From his other life. I sank into the armchair, gripping the arms until my knuckles turned white. 52 years of marriage, of shared life, and now, this. The reality of his betrayal pressed in from all sides. I wanted to scream, to throw the photographs across the room, to collapse in tears. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I looked at my daughter, who was pale, lips pressed together, eyes wide with shock. I can't believe it, she whispered. I know, I said, voice trembling. Neither can I. For a long moment, we sat in silence, the photographs spread across the table. The rain tapped against the windowpane like tiny hammers, punctuating the unspoken grief and anger. Then the woman spoke again. I didn't know how to tell you before. I only learned recently. Anne. I think he would have wanted you to know, eventually. Her words struck me like cold water. I remembered all the moments we had shared, birthdays, holidays, quiet evenings at home. And now, every one of those memories carried a shadow, a hidden truth I hadn't been ready to face. Why did he do it? I asked finally, though my voice was barely audible. Why did he hide all of this? She shook her head. I don't know. Maybe he was afraid. Maybe he thought he was protecting us both. But it doesn't change what he did. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. No, I said. It doesn't. My daughter reached for my hand. Mom, what do we do now? I studied the photographs, each one a fragment of a life I hadn't known existed. I realized we had a choice. We could let this destroy us, or we could confront it, face the reality, and decide what kind of family we wanted to be, moving forward. We live, I said firmly. We accept the truth, and we move forward. Not pretending, not ignoring, but living. The woman nodded, relief flickering across her face. Thank you, she said. I was afraid it would destroy everything. It won't destroy us, I said, voice firmer now. It will change us. But that's different. After she left, the rain eased, leaving the garden damp and shimmering. I walked among the wet leaves, the smell of earth grounding me. The photographs, the revelations, the betrayal, all of it would remain with me. But so would my resolve. Later that evening, I sat with my grandchildren, reading stories, watching them laugh. The sound was healing, a reminder that life, even fractured and complicated, continues. I realized that love and truth coexist, sometimes in painful ways, but that doesn't diminish their power. As I closed my eyes that night, I thought of my husband, of the man I loved, of the man I never fully knew. And I understood, finally, that life is a tapestry of light and shadow, and only by seeing both can we truly understand what it means to live, to love, and to endure. The night was heavy with silence, the kind that presses on your chest and refuses to leave. I sat in the living room, surrounded by photographs, letters, and memories, some comforting, most jagged, each a shard of the life I thought I knew. My daughter came in, quiet as a shadow, carrying 2 cups of tea. I didn't speak immediately. I let the warmth of the cup seep into my hands, grounding me. My mind replayed every scene from the past weeks, the whispers at the funeral, the secret revealed, the confrontation with his other family, the photographs of children I had never known. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than I had imagined. And yet, there was clarity beneath the pain, a raw, unfiltered understanding that life is messy and unkind, but truth endures. "Mom," my daughter said softly, "I don't know if I can forgive him, or even fully understand." I nodded. "Child, I don't think forgiveness is the point. Understanding, maybe. Acceptance, eventually. But right now, we face reality. We face it together." She leaned into me, the warmth of her body a reminder that love could still anchor us, even when grief threatened to pull us under. "I keep thinking about how much he lied," she whispered. "All these years. And yet, I loved him. I still do, in some way. How is that possible?" I sighed, staring at the ceiling as memories tumbled over me. The truth is, love is never neat. It doesn't vanish when betrayal surfaces. It lingers, complicated and stubborn, coexisting with anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. "Love," I said finally, "is bigger than our understanding of it. It survives beyond reason, beyond betrayal. It changes shape, yes, but it doesn't disappear. That's the part we carry forward." We sat in silence, the quiet punctuated only by the occasional creak of the house settling, the distant hum of traffic outside, the faint scent of damp earth drifting in from the garden. I let the silence settle, heavy but necessary. And then I spoke to him, not the man in the photographs, not the one who deceived, but the husband I had loved for decades. "I loved you," I whispered into the empty room. "I trusted you. I mourn you, and I mourn what I never knew. But I will not let your secrets define me. I will not let them define us." My daughter reached for my hand again, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt the storm in my chest ease slightly. We would survive this. Not because the betrayal vanished, not because the pain would be gone, but because we chose to move forward despite it. The next morning, the children ran into the living room, bright-eyed, innocent. They asked questions about Grandpa, about life, about why the sky looked grey. I answered honestly, simply, without burdening them with the complexity of betrayal. Their laughter spilled into the room like sunlight, reminding me that life, messy, complicated, and sometimes cruel, still offered beauty. Later, my daughter and I walked in the garden, leaves crisp beneath our feet, air sharp and clear. "Mom," she said softly, "do you think we'll ever fully heal from this?" I stopped, brushing a damp leaf from my coat. We may not heal completely. Some wounds are permanent. But we adapt. We grow. We forgive ourselves for what we cannot control. And we carry the truth forward, not as a weapon, but as a guide. She nodded, tears glinting in her eyes, and I knew we had reached a turning point. The raw, jagged pain of revelation would linger, yes, but it would no longer dominate our lives. We had faced the worst of it, together. That evening, I wrote in my journal again, recording not only the betrayals and secrets but also the resilience, the moments of clarity, the love that persisted despite everything. I wrote to preserve memory, to honor the truth, and to teach my grandchildren, someday, that life is never perfect, but it is always worth living fully. As I closed the journal, I felt a deep, quiet resolve. I had loved, I had been deceived, and I had survived. And that survival was not passive, it was active, conscious, a choice to embrace life even in the face of heartbreak. I looked around the house, the photographs, the letters, the faint scent of my husband's aftershave lingering like a ghost, and whispered one final acknowledgement: you were part of my life, flawed and human. But I am more than the pain you caused. I am still here. And we are still here. Morning light spilled softly through the curtains, golden and forgiving. The house felt different, not empty, but lighter, as if the weight of secrets had finally lifted just enough to breathe. I sat at the kitchen table, tea in hand, watching my grandchildren play, their laughter a melody that filled every corner with warmth. My daughter joined me, sitting quietly beside me. We didn't need to speak immediately. We let the calm settle, letting the air between us carry the memory of grief, the sting of betrayal, and the clarity we had gained from facing it together. Finally, she spoke. Mom, I think we're finally starting to heal. I nodded, thinking of the past weeks, the funeral, the whispers, the confrontations, the photographs, the letters, the conversations with his other family. It had been a storm, relentless and unyielding. And yet, here we were. Standing, not unscathed, but stronger for having endured. Child, I said softly, hearing the truth doesn't erase the love, nor does it erase the life we built. It simply reminds us that life is never perfect, and people are never entirely what we hope them to be. But it's what we do with the truth that defines us. She looked at me, eyes glistening. I don't know how we'll explain this to the children when they're older. Or if we even should. I smiled faintly. We preserve innocence where it matters, yes. But we also teach them honesty. Courage. That life is complex, but worth living fully. That's our responsibility, not to shield them from pain, but to guide them through it. Later that day, I walked through the garden, crisp leaves crunching beneath my boots, the scent of wet earth grounding me. The photographs, letters, and memories of my husband remained, but they no longer held the power to dominate my world. They were part of the tapestry of our lives, a tapestry rich with love, betrayal, grief, and resilience. I paused by the rosebush he had planted decades ago, now blooming despite the neglect. Life persisted, in the most stubborn, beautiful way. I realized then that our family, too, would persist. We would carry the love we had, the lessons we had learned, and the truth we now embraced. That evening, I gathered my grandchildren on my lap and began to tell them stories, not the stories of betrayal, not the hidden truths, but the stories of courage, of love, of mistakes and forgiveness, and the importance of facing life with honesty. Their eyes sparkled, filled with trust, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of closure. When my daughter joined us, I took her hand. We will continue, I said, together. Stronger because we faced the truth, not weaker. And someday, when you tell your children, you will tell them not just about the pain, but about the courage it took to survive it. Later that night, I sat alone by the window, looking at the stars emerging in the dark sky. I thought of my husband, of the life we shared, of the lies, of the hidden children, and of all the moments we had lived. And I understood, finally, that life's meaning isn't in perfection or complete understanding. It's in endurance, in the choices we make after betrayal, and in the love we continue to give despite it all. I whispered into the quiet, not for him, but for myself. I loved, I grieved, I endured. And I will continue. That is my truth. That is our legacy. With that, I closed my eyes, letting the calm of acceptance wash over me. The past was a shadow, the future uncertain, but the present, this moment, with my family, with love and truth, was ours. And in that, I found peace.